Hi there! You're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show where we talk about newsy type stuff and things. My name is Tom.
My name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. You can visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. It's a Tom and Adam episode this week. George, you know what? No, I'm not going to be mean. I'm not going to say that he died in some horrific accident or, is on the run from whatever government agency is most topical at the moment. He's enjoying some rest and relaxation with his family that is well earned. Yeah, he's just having a good old time, and he's having a little break.
Take some me time.
Yeah. Although, I say he's having a little break, he was adamant to try and also do the show while he was on holiday.
Yep.
And I was constantly saying, like, dude, it's cool. You can take a break.
Chill.
I think you need a break. And he was like, no, I'll do it.
It's almost like he doesn't trust us, Tom.
Yeah, almost.
It's almost like he thinks that we're going to botch this entire show and that our brilliant blue eyes and brown hair and pale complexion isn't going to just woo the listener into, even though it's an audio medium.
Yeah, I was going to say,
for those that are watching it,
all those visual aesthetics are going to nail this audio
medium. Absolutely irrelevant to what we're doing.
Yeah.
As Tom said, we'll
be able to do it. I think.
As Tom said, we are a show about newsy type stuff and things, although we have recently received feedback that we're actually just a show about politics, which occasionally ventures into other news and occasionally is funny. So it doesn't really roll off the tongue, but that's kind of what you're in for if you've just tuned in for the first time.
Yeah.
And leading us off today is breaking news. This is breaking, Tom, in the last 24 hours, which is unusual for us. Scott Morrison has received a King's Birthday honour. Tell me more.
So it's the King's Birthday public holiday today. I think it's not actually the King's birthday. It wasn't the Queen's birthday either when it was theirs. It's just a weekend in the middle of the year that they pick, which is odd that it's not even frickin' their birthday, but whatever.
And it's also, like, for different states, they just don't have this public holiday.
Yes,
they just
that's
do it
true.
In different
ironically,
dates around the year.
Ironically, in the Queen's land, so to speak, they didn't have the Queen's birthday long weekend at this time. They have it at another time. Anyway, so that's the reason we're recording this today. Rather than yesterday, we took advantage of this lovely public holiday. But part of what they do on the King's, the King, Queen's, whoever's birthday is that they have honours. Yes, the monarch's honours. Which are similar to, like, the Australia Day honours. Like, they're just a bunch of medals that are sort of given out for X, Y, or Z. There's apparently like 830 Australians being honoured today for whatever reason here or there. But the recipient of the highest honour that one can be given in these King's Birthday honours, the Companion of the Order of Australia. It's called an AC, though, which is interesting given the I don't know, Australia Companion? Is that what they mean there? Like, I don't know, it's just a bit of a weird acronym for that. But the recipient of the Companion of the Order of Australia is none other than Scott Morrison, our 30th Prime Minister. Complete bell end. I don't know. I couldn't think of a good witty remark there. He sucks. We hate him. But he was given this award for his eminent service to the country and his direction of the national COVID response. Which, I don't know about you, Adam, but in what universe was his direction of the COVID response award worthy in any way, shape, or form? He was famously terrible.
It was a difficult time.
It was a difficult
time. Oh, look, I mean, we could really get into this if you want to, but look, it could have been worse. Let me put it this way:
we did better than most. I'll give it that. We did better than most in a lot of ways, but given the election in 2022, when he was booted out, or as he would say, resigned, when we would say was kicked out by the electorate, was so predicated on things like his terrible vaccine rollout. Now he said it's not a race and all this sort of stuff. What? Like, he was famously lampooned for his COVID response. What are we doing?
I think in the early days, like in the first, let's say 6 months, I think he did relatively well. So he did one thing that I thought was a good move, that he got rid of the previous Council of Australian Governments thing and basically said we're having a national cabinet, which basically got him and the premiers, the various state premiers in a room and actually helped them coordinate and do things quickly. They became more agile, right? Great move. They closed the borders. They announced financial stimulus. That was all good, and we thought that was good at the time. The problem is, as the pandemic went on, they weren't as resilient as a government, the Liberal government at that time, as it turns out, because they'd hollowed out the public service, shockingly over the last 7 years. They weren't as resilient to a long-term problem as perhaps they ought to have been. And that showed in ways of such as things like, like delayed vaccine rollout, poor public messaging, open conflicts with various premiers, not being necessarily agile enough with particular situations that were happening on the ground in various states. And look, part of that is to do with Australia's constitution, right? Like the states are responsible for health. They were the ones at the coalface, the state employees were the ones at the hospitals dealing with all the infected. So, to some extent, like the feds probably did as much as they could. But again, the longer this went on, the less control you could see the federal government really had of the situation. And the other thing we worked out was that the financial stimulus that they gave us was probably over and above too much, poorly delivered, and like actually caused inflation in the end.
Yeah. Just handing millions of dollars to a billionaire just for fun.
For fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, look, like all these things were ostensibly good at the start, but the longer they went on, the longer term effects of sort of everything that had happened became quite clear.
Yeah. So award,
but is that Scott Morrison's fault? Is the next question.
Oh, I mean, I'd argue yes. He might not have been prime minister for that entire 7-year period that had hollowed out the public service, but he was in government that whole time. He was one of the key players.
I mean, look, I don't envy his position. During the start of a global pandemic, I would not want to be the prime minister of a country dealing with everyone's trauma. Who wants
to be the prime minister of a country at any time? You'd have to be insane to want to be the prime minister of anywhere. Like, it sounds like the most insane job to do. What madman aspires to do this?
But the thing is with these, so my grandfather's no AM, and you get nominated. So it's not like he put his hand up and said, "Hey, like I want to get an award." So someone has nominated him. They've gone through the paperwork, and then someone's obviously seconded in the nomination, and it's quite like it's not the first time, I imagine, without having looked at any previous cases. I'd assume there are previous prime ministers that have had
prime ministers often
this,
get them.
Yeah. So it's not like Tony Abbott knighting, Prince Philip or whatever.
Yeah. The infamous captain's call.
Yeah. But it is interesting given, he's also the same prime minister that held like 7 ministries at once.
Yes! Right! Those were kind of the next steps. Like, what about all the other shit that he did? What about when he covertly took over the country?
So it's odd. Yeah, given it's over 3.5, he's prime minister for over 3.5 years. He was COVID, it was COVID sort of for 2.5 of those. It's interesting. It's interesting that they were like, let's, on the face of it, let's give him the bill. And look, maybe there's things that we don't know about as citizens, that we weren't privy to that he actually handled really well. Maybe that's the case. But I would argue that while Australia did better than most, it wasn't the cleanest run, shall we say, of management at a prime ministerial level.
Yeah. And naturally, in his acceptance speech, because I think like these things are announced, like the honors happened yesterday or something like that.
Yeah.
That in his speech he just credited Australians for their courage and resilience in face of crises that included the Black Summer bushfires, which, I don't know if you remember, Adam, but Scott Morrison and fires, oh boy, you put those two things together, and I don't think let's high-five him, high-five a million angels and give him a medal. I think he was famously ridiculed for that. And fucked off to Hawaii, I think, at that time. Remember? So yeah,
he did.
Great. Oh, service to the country. Fucking off to Hawaii while it burned. What are we?
And he came back and said he doesn't hold a hose. I think from me was the quote.
Yeah, like yes, he didn't nominate himself for this, but you know what? You ask me, that makes it worse. That means someone else was like, yeah, he did a great job, and several other people were like, you know what? I think he did. It makes me wonder, what does he know? What does he have over these people who make these decisions? Like, does the king make this decision? What does ScoMo have on the king that led to this happening? I think, here's my conspiracy theory, here's my tinfoil hat thing. I reckon that ScoMo knows who really shat themselves at Engadine Macca's, and it was King Charles. I reckon he knows it. He knows it too. Like, they've tried to obfuscate it by saying that his brother was, at a pizza restaurant instead of hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. No. See, it's just close enough to the truth because it's some other kind of food chain, but no, it was King Charles and a McDonald's, and he shat himself rather than being at a pizza place, not hanging out with a pedophile.
Do you honestly think that King Charles has ever been to a McDonald's?
Oh, I bet he has. There has to be some kind of photo op at least. They're like, oh yes, yeah, here we are. We're just like you people. Yes. What is this? You call this a French fry? You say? Yeah. No, there's definitely situations like that. Surely. Anyway,
but yeah, so he's got it's actually this is the other thing, is that the AC is the highest award, right, in the list of awards you can get on the as Order of Australia.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
It's pretty monumental. Oh, I think also they referenced his great job securing the AUKUS agreement. Those submarines we're never gonna get. Top job. Great work.
It's a bit early to pat yourself on the back when nothing's been delivered as part of that, I think. Oh my God.
Also none of the leaders involved are in power anymore. So, they're all, just saddled with this deal that 3 other fuckheads agreed to.
Well, I guess we're doing it. It is, on that note, that we do move over to the United States, where Mummy and Daddy are breaking up.
Speaking of fuckheads.
The relationship has... Look, it was beautiful while it lasted. There was compliments, there was Teslas, there was audits, and there was DOGE, and there was caps and MAGA and chainsaws and possibly Nazi salutes, Roman salutes, whatever you want to call it. All of these things happened, but of course, all good things must come to an end, and that includes the bromance between Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
Yeah, it's... Oh, holy dooly, what a week, right? It's... God, I don't even know where to start with this, because so it seems where this started. Okay, so it seems the breakup occurred after all that sort of stuff, so much quids and pros and quos of Elon. Yeah, Elon, you help me get elected. I'll hawk Teslas on the front lawn of the White House. I'll fucking announce tariffs that'll tank share prices so you guys can buy them all, and then I can renounce the tariffs and up go the share prices, and you can sell high. All this sort of stuff going back and forth. But it was, as we talked about in, I think it was last week's episode, maybe the week before, about the quote-unquote big, beautiful bill that will be absolutely just gutting everything left, right, and center and transferring shit tons of wealth and all that sort of stuff. Part of that looks to be impacting, Tesla's exemptions to a lot of things. It seems that it will be directly impacting Elon's businesses. I don't have the full, kind of understanding and breakdown. I understand there was some exclusivity details and, some exclusivity stuff that the government agreed to with Tesla, some subsidies and all that sort of stuff. So it's going to be impacting that. So Elon not happy about that. And probably voiced his unhappiness with it. And when both these stubborn man-child egos come to clash, they're going to have just a big, very public spat on the respective social media platforms that they own. So that's what also kind of makes this funny, right? Everything Elon's saying to Trump is happening on Twitter because he owns Twitter and he's having a complaint, which Trump isn't really on anymore. And Trump's having his spat on Truth Social, which I assume Elon's not on, or at least he'd have people who are on it who could tell him and stuff. But it's like they are both just yelling to their audience and not each other, which also just makes this very silly.
That's great.
But boy, basically, did it escalate quickly.
It did. So Elon basically said that the bill is pilot dog shit, which we've been saying for, and most people, not just us, everyone, we just parrot other people's opinions, but most people have been saying it's a big pile of shit for months.
Yeah.
So that's what Elon sort of said that as well. Increase the debt ceiling and slash taxes is kind of what it's going to do, but it also, in doing so, increases the amount of debt the US has by God knows
and also
how much.
Cuts a whole bunch of health services that are going to kill a lot of people.
Oh yeah, and there's always other stuff that's tied in with it, right? So yeah, Donald Trump. I'm just going to try and find some of these tweets here. I don't know which order these happened in.
I just think it went a bit nuts because, the sorts of things Trump said. Okay, let's start with what Trump's been saying in his echo chamber.
Sure.
Because he described it as that, because after this big blow up, so it was clear that their relationship had suffered greatly and that Elon was leaving. I think also the DOGE, his thing of the Department of Government Efficiency and all that was winding down, or at least his role in it was winding down anyway.
Yeah.
But so Trump says, and I quote, Elon was wearing thin and that he asked him to leave. He said, I took away his EV mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted, and he knew for months I was going to do that, and he just went crazy. So that was his comment.
Crazy with capitals.
Crazy with capitals, wearing thin in quotation marks, and electric cars capitalized like a proper noun, which was interesting. And he further sort of went on to spat that, saying the easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. So I was surprised that Biden didn't do that. I guess a lot of people have been saying that you want to make cuts to the budget, stop fucking giving handouts to billionaires, but that's neither here nor there. And Trump just goes on to ramble about numbers and biggest tax cuts ever, saying his bill's one of the greatest ever presented to Congress. He says, I don't mind Elon turning against me, but he should have done so months ago. Mate, months ago was when you were inaugurated. You wanted him to turn on you, right then? Oh, God, he's insane. Anyway, so, Trump kind of doing just what Trump does, right? He'll just capitalize the word billions, rattle off some stats, say, why didn't people do this again? Shout, make America great again, and call it a day. But Elon did what Elon does best, which is, do some crazy, subreddit man-child lunacy, starting out with, just saying things like, nah, well, without me, Trump would have lost the election. He should be more grateful, and just, kind of babying around like that. But then it all culminated then in Elon saying, all right, you know what? Time to drop the really big bomb. Trump is in the Epstein files. That's why they haven't been made public. Have a nice day. And then just pieces out. So...
And this is not the first time that he's just when he's rage quit something, he's just called someone a pedo.
Yes,
he famously called that diver
move.
His go-to move is is to call someone a pedo and then go offline.
Yeah, I said to my wife, I was like, wow, for once I'm on Elon's side in calling someone a pedo. I never thought that would happen.
I mean, what are the odds that he is in the Epstein files? Not that, I mean, everyone keeps talking about the Epstein files like there's a thing that is the Epstein file. Like, there may not even be. Are the Epstein files even real? Everyone just keeps talking about it.
Well, I mean, there must be files on, like, the case and all that, and, like, whatever evidence they had against Jeffrey Epstein to be, like, why they had him in jail before he may or may not have killed himself.
So, yeah, it's a huge tranche of evidence relating to the late Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, yeah.
So there are lots of records.
Some of it's been released, some of it hasn't, all that sort of stuff. But I mean, look, you can only speculate as to how much or how little Trump is mentioned in these files, but there are many pictures of them together being sociable. I'm sure that he's mentioned in them, like, whatever those allegations are. I mean, yeah, there's things I've read online out and about, like from court testimonies and stuff that, no, let's not get into those details, but they're pretty grim. But I love it though. Yeah, Elon dropping that. It's just a big, like, yeah, he did it. He played the call him a pedo card and peace out that he loves to do. But it's also like, yeah, nah, fucking duh, Elon. We all knew that. We all knew the reason those files aren't being, like, properly announced is probably because they don't look very good for Trump. Whether just by association or something worse.
Mention the amount of lobbied interests there are probably from other billionaires of not releasing those files, given the people that are probably in them.
Yes, 100%. Maybe even Elon himself, given, like, there's that famous photo of him and Ghislaine Maxwell that circulates every now and then. So, like, I'm sure he's not too keen on any further stuff like that coming out. Yeah, it's just...
it has blown up spectacularly, this relationship.
It's amazing.
And look, the other thing
there's
is
not enough
that,
popcorn in the world.
There isn't. There is not enough. Like, I've eaten all the popcorn, Tom. It's gone. Like, you can't find any more. We're on rations now. Like, SpaceX is the other big interest. So Elon, a lot of Elon's big passion projects rely on government subsidies and contracts. So it makes sense, you know, that that he's upset. But I mean, to Trump's point, I don't understand why Elon's now rage quitting. Like, what did he think he was going to do? Get some carve outs? I guess that's what he thought. I guess he thought he'd get some sort of special deal out of all this, out of his relationship, you know, with Trump. It's very odd. It's very odd that, you know, I mean, the other aspect, of course, I guess as well, is that Trump's like, not Trump, Elon, like, in some of these meetings he's been having with, you know, in the Oval Office, you know, looks visibly high as a kite.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's changed now, Adam? I think maybe the ketamine's wearing off.
Wearing off or kicking in? I don't know. One of the two. Something's
true.
changed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you know, and DOGE has saved, you know, allegedly it's slashed hundreds of billions of dollars out of the budget, but it's still a fraction of really what's needed to actually balance the budget. Even if you were, like, we've talked about this before, but like, if you were to actually balance the US budget, you would need to cut basically everything, including, like, Medicare, the military. Like, you would have to go, like, do a complete 180.
Oh, yeah. Which, with the exception of the military, is exactly what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to cut Medicare, all this sort of stuff. Like,
well, they're not real. They're not. I mean, it's interesting because they're not saying that they're wanting to cut Medicare, right? Like it's in the bill. There are cuts to social services and foreign aid and all this kind of stuff. But look, they haven't actually said we're stopping social services.
Oh no, because
like they've been dancing around that.
Yeah, it'd be woefully unpopular.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean,
but if you wanted to, like, make an impact, like, that would be where you'd start. You'd say we're just stopping social services basically across the entire US government. But yeah, anyway, they're trying to get there, but doing it by stealth, I guess. But even though it's like there in black and white that they are doing it in this big beautiful bill in various parts of it, like, no one's actually going to read the bill because people are lazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of crazy. But look, this is not the first time this has happened, right? So Trump was on board with Musk, and Musk was on board with Trump in the last term of government, and the same sort of thing happened. Like, do you remember this? Like, they were not, like, he wasn't as heavily involved as he is now, but he was Elon was tacitly supporting Trump.
Yeah.
for a period of time in the first Trump administration. And then the same sort of thing happened, and they had a falling out, and they didn't see eye to eye, and all this kind of crap.
Oh yeah, they'll see eye to eye until it involves removing his subsidies.
Yeah. I mean, George described it as it was inevitable because it's the two biggest egos in the room. Eventually, they're going to start rowing in different directions, right?
Oh yeah.
But this is how Trump deals with people. People get on the Trump train.
Yeah.
They try and use him, or they try and see. They're addicted to the power of the presidency, and they go along with it for as long as they can until Trump does something like either fucks them or does something so heinous that they're like, oh, we can't go along with this. Mostly it's Trump fucking them. And then they leave the administration, write a tell-all messy novel, do a few TV interviews, cash in on that, and then go on their merry way. Like, the first administration's littered with corpses of people that were quote unquote in the administration or working with the administration or having official roles and non-official roles, advisors, whatever else that just got pushed to one side when they realized they're dealing with a lunatic. So it's the same.
It's almost on them now. Like, you should know you're dealing with a lunatic by now. Like, you can't be going in expecting to not be dealing with a lunatic.
Well, look, I don't understand. Everyone, particular. And look, to be fair to Trump, he's probably held on to his core team longer this time than he had in the first administration. It's a little less chaotic. It's a little more organized. But I'd argue that's more the other way around. It's more that the 2025 movement, the fund, the Heritage Foundation, and the various Republican movement around him is more organized now and more resilient to his chaos, so they can actually manipulate him more.
Yeah.
It's not the other way around. Whereas, there's probably less quote unquote corpses up until he's been in power for about 6-7 months.
You're about to say
maybe,
a year, weren't you? It feels.
I wasn't I? It's like it's not a year yet. So maybe look, there's 3.5 years now where there could still be a pile of like people just going, I can't work with this guy, and messy tell-all novels that come out. But like maybe as in the first administration, maybe that won't do anything because he's just resilient somehow to anything that anyone says about him. I don't know. I just what I'm saying is, my point, I'm getting to it, is everyone's like, oh, they broke up. Like, oh, it's shocking. It's like, no, it's not. It's like, it's just par for the course. This is just another casualty again in the Trump lunacy.
Oh, yeah. I feel it's the shocking part, although it's not even that shocking really, is just like the way in which this breakup's happened. It's usually that like
it's very public.
Someone gives like a press conference where they're all like, he's like, no, he's a fool or this sort of stuff, but it's rarely like, and he's a pedophile. Peace. Like, it's rare that they do that.
This is true.
Yeah.
It is a very public, a very like petulant meltdown.
Yes,
is the way I'd put it.
It's a big like Discord server, like flame war kind of vibe.
It's kind of like, I mean, it's very dated, but like back in the day when it was not socially acceptable, but it was boys being boys. When you were at school, everyone's like, oh no, you're gay. Oh no, you're gay, and it's like you just go back and forth for like 30 minutes, everyone's just saying the same thing. Oh, that's what it's like. It's like socially, like, but you can't say those things. And secondly, like, it's like you're both like 10-year-olds, just like accusing each other of like whatever the thing is. In this case here, pedophiles.
Yeah.
Which is not good.
Yeah. So I guess watch this space. We'll see now what happens. I don't know, like, because when as someone as like wealthy and influential as Elon Musk, I guess, turns against you, like, I don't know, it'd be super interesting if suddenly Elon tries to be like, oh no, I'm the most left-wing environmentalist person you've ever seen, and like just in another ketamine crazy hole, like another K-hole, just tries to like back a Democrat for some reason.
This was the thing that I thought they were strange bedfellows, but obviously it was Elon was doing this for a reason. Was that, you know, they do have massive disagreements around things like the environment and economic policy, right? They don't see eye to eye on any of this. The only thing that they seemed to come together on was the fact that they didn't like Biden, and they thought the government was wasting money. So, but like, once you realize that the government, I mean, sure, it's wasting money, but like, it's much harder to unpick that problem than just going in and, you know, firing a bunch of people and changing the direction of funds. Like, once you realize that that's a problem that's not just a quick fix, really, you guys don't have much in common at all. And in fact, Musk is actually quite reliant on Trump in terms of having, for things like SpaceX, like those contracts.
Yeah, definitely. And so many of, I forget where I saw this infograph, but so many of the departments and all that, the DOGE hit so hard, were ones that were like having negative impacts on Elon's interests, like, you know, that were investigating his companies, or that would be preventing permits for X, Y, or Z and stuff like that. So it was just blatant what he was trying to get out of it.
Oh, they were using each other. Yeah, using each other. Friends with benefits until there is no more benefits.
Yeah, 100%.
But yes. We're here for the Twitter war.
Yeah, can't wait to see how this escalates. Those 3 a.m. toilet tweets are going to be great. Speaking of the US making demands, so the US is trying to make demands of Australia, just by going like, oi, buy more of our shit. We demand that you spend more money buying our bang bang gear, like more
bang
bang gear, more missiles, more like
right. Sorry, I thought
more whatever.
I thought you were talking about some other kind of bang bang gear. That's just a very different. We're in two different worlds.
Please, we have a very lucrative made in Australia industry for that kind of gear, Adam. We don't need any foreign investment there. No,
Sexy Land does very well.
Yeah, ixnay on them recently. Neither here nor there. So. Yeah, the US is essentially just big, like, we think Australia should spend more, like, on defense.
Yeah.
To them specifically. It's a weird demand.
Well, I mean, so look, a few things have happened. Hegseth has been talking, not just to Australia, but also to making some announcements generally about their Southeast Asian allies. Basically saying that the Southeast Asian allies need to lift their game, including, you know, countries like Japan and South Korea, I'm assuming, as well. Yeah. So what they're saying is, you know, if you want, what the Hegseth's point here is, if you want us to be a bulwark against China, then you got to do your heavy lifting, which is the same shit they've been talking about in Europe with the Russians, right? Yeah. So they're saying now Hegseth's starting to parrot out the same line to countries within Asia. Now, specifically, they said, in terms of Australia, they want us to lift its defence spending to almost $100 billion a year as soon as possible, which would be something like 3.5% of GDP, and it's about an extra $40 billion a year, up from what we're currently spending, which is about 2%. Now, interestingly, one of the coalition's policies in the election was to also raise spending, I think, to about 3% of GDP. And we often talk in Australia about percentage of GDP because the numbers are so big, it's better to look at it as sort of a share of the budget. But like, even if let's say we do, like, there's a number of problems with this. Like, in terms of defense policy, the US is obviously very focused on spending money, and they've also, by and large, if we do spend more money, we're probably going to spend it with the United States. Depending on where we spend it, But this is the thing. Saying that we're going to increase the number doesn't actually really fix the problem in terms of defense policy, because you need to know what you're going to spend the money on.
Like submarines that don't exist.
Yeah, right. And there are lots of people, lots of areas of the defense industry in Australia, or defense department perhaps, that would be crying out for more funds, sure. Like, let's create more missiles. Let's get long-range bombers. Let's increase the size of the Navy. Like, these are all things that, let's increase the size of the army. Look, these are all things that you could spend the money on physically. But even if you were to do that, still not necessarily, one, going to fix the problem, which is China's probably going to invade Taiwan in the next 3 years. And look, some people say, it's not going to happen, but like, it probably will. Even if they don't invade Taiwan, they could do some sort of like blockade. There are things they can do to force Taiwan to come to its terms.
They'll make a move in some.
There'll be something that'll happen.
Yeah.
I doubt they've spent all this money and this sort of, all the moves they've made in the South China Sea. I don't see all that just for fun. Like, they're working towards something. Like, and most foreign policy hawks will tell you that it's about Taiwan. Now, even if they're going to do that in the next 2 or 3 years, like, this is the window that experts are saying, 2025 to 2027. We're in that window right now. So even if we were just to spend an extra $40 billion a year, by the time we get some new ships in, by the time we get some planes that land, by the time we get a few more missiles, we're done. Yeah. Like, by the time the submarines come, this whole situation is done.
Yeah. Or we'll have escalated to the point where it's not going to help.
Like we won't be spending 3.5%. We'll be spending 10% of GDP because shit's going to get real. Yeah. Like, an extra 40, like, and I get the US, the concept, it goes with the whole MAGA thing, right? And the isolationist version of, like, we have to make countries, support themselves, stand on their own 2 feet.
Yeah.
But, like, for people just to say it needs to be an extra $40 billion a year without any sort of clear sort of indication as to what we're going to be doing with that money and how it's going to help, what the value add is just pointless. Yeah. And now we're having this discussion about it, which again is pointless.
Yeah.
Because in the end of the day, it's probably not going to matter. Now, look, as I said, I'm sure there are things that we could spend that money on, but it's like, is that really the priority right now? Given, like, I would much rather us withdraw from the AUKUS deal to some extent and reorientate that money back into more conventional forces that we would see in the next 5 to 10 years. But that's my opinion. But again, even if we did that, it's still going to be too late. If you go with this window of, like, it's going to happen, there's going to be a conflict in the next 3 years or so.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel just this entire situation of, like, these demands, these, like, defense attitudes, I think it just further goes to show that you should just maybe a Fox and Friends weekend host is not qualified to be managing the defense.
Turns out, no.
Of the global superpower.
I mean, he's parroting the line they've been using in Europe for the last since the first Trump administration, right?
Yeah.
And this is and in doing so, they are unwinding, as we've talked about in the show for years, the American empire. It's collapsing because of things they're doing like this, where they're indicating that they are not a strong and reliable partner. Sure, maybe it's better for them if their allies are more well equipped, but by the same token, like, if we don't think we can rely on the US, we'll just, like, we're looking at German shipbuilders at the moment, right? For some of the mid-sized frigate thing that they're trying to create. But again, those frigates, even if let's say we bought 10 more frigates for that extra $40 billion, we wouldn't see them for fucking 20 years or 15, not 20, but like 10 years probably. So, anyway, this concept of just spending more money in defense gives me the shits, because it's like, it's not actually It doesn't address the problem.
No,
and this is the other thing. One more thing, just to go on defence policy and a bit of a rant. Australia cannot meet its recruitment targets for the Defence Force as it is. So even if there was a war with China tomorrow, I don't know if I wonder, like, the Australian Defence Force doesn't have enough people to do a whole lot at this stage. We barely have enough people to defend our own borders. So, like, even if we spend an extra $40 billion, the recruitment process takes about a year now if you want to join the army, right? Like, if you want to, like, there was a case study that the Australian Strategic Policy Institute looked at, where they're like, one guy applied for the army, it took him a year to get approved and go to basic. So even if you were to spend a shitload more money, it doesn't necessarily make it more efficient. It doesn't necessarily get the people in the buildings, in the departments actually doing the work to make things, to create more productive output, because Australians don't seem to, the military isn't a competitive, like even though they're, let me get back a step. We want to increase our total, like, defence force, like, numbers in terms of the amount of people that are in it. Well, we want to up that, but we're way behind on that target. And this is with increased spending that they've put into the defence force to up to 2% of GDP. We're still not quite at where we need to be. And this is despite the fact that it takes, it's hard to get a job in the defence force at the moment, even though they've got an increased target, because their hiring process is so shit. So my point being is, again, spending money doesn't actually fix anything, because people aren't, like, the actual systems that are in place aren't particularly efficient. Anyway.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I get you. Like, it's one of those classic things of just the problem isn't like lack of funds entirely. Like, it's not like just you need to greater fund exactly what we're doing. It's more, there's new processes, like, processes need to be reassessed and priorities need to sort of shift, and, like, you can't just taking the US out of it for a second, like, we've already got our own issues with handling our own kind of defense sort of setup. We can't just then be going, and let's just, like, spend more money with the US.
Some more tanks.
That'll fix it.
Buck. But look, Pete Hegseth's hair looks amazing. So
does it?
I actually I like his hair. It's kind of just, it's like sort of, he just uses like a nice wax, I think, on it. Just sort of all slicked back, graying, like Silver Fox kind of vibe.
I mean, the Silver Fox kind of vibe, sure, but I don't know. Is it just like, I don't know, is it grease from, like, the tar pits of cronyism for such a fascist government that gives you, like, great lift like that?
Maybe it's the vibes that are keeping it all in place.
Yeah, maybe secreting pure evil gives you just fantastic looks.
Speaking of secreting pure evil, Los Angeles is currently in a bit of a riot at the moment. So it's been happening for the past couple of days now. I guess not a lot of comedy in this, although then again we just talked about defense policy for a while, which is, shall we say, dry. Sorry, I get really excited about defense policy, so if you stopped listening during that, I apologize.
Yeah, they won't even hear the apology if they stopped. Good point. So we've talked about it a bit before on the show, but, like, the Trump administration's been rolling out, to put it lightly, goons all over America, just to be rounding up people that they deem to be there illegally and have been shipping them off to El Salvador and, like, all that sort of stuff. Like, really just doing the secret police kind of stomping around and just kidnapping people off the street. And Los Angeles are not putting up with it. So there's been big protests for, I think we're on day 3 now, of, like, large marches throughout Los Angeles, because I believe California is where ICE, the department that handles the aforementioned goons, have been most active because I think the like something like 22% of the foreign-born population of the United States is in California. And there's also other things in like California's legislation where like the local law enforcement are not permitted to assist ICE in their dealings and stuff. So I imagine there's also a bit of a bugbear from the administration that they're not too happy about that. Yeah, anyway, so there's been large protests, and those have naturally, it's the States with their heavily militarized government agencies and police force, and it's turned violent. Tear gas, rubber bullets, all that sort of stuff, flying left, right, and center. Some of the footage is pretty harrowing, but
So basically, on Friday, ICE launched a number of raids. And when we say ICE, like these guys are on the back of MRAPs, like, armored vehicles, dressed in military fatigues, rocking up to different sites.
They're an offshoot
around the
of
city.
the Department of Homeland Security.
Correct.
They are armed to the teeth.
So they're not like, cops rocking up with a warrant. They're like, they look like a SWAT team.
And they aren't
driving
cops
around Los Angeles
either. Like, it's a different department. This isn't like, the police. These are specifically...
These are feds.
Yeah, these are the feds.
So large raids. They went to lots of different places around the city and arrested about 44 people on alleged immigration violations. Now, preceding this, like a week ago, they tried to do the same thing in a localized area, but they must have somehow word got out, and there was a really quick sort of protest that turned around, which actually stopped them from doing their raid. So I reckon someone tipped them off on the inside potentially, and the community activated, and they were actually able to stop this raid from happening. But I guess they've learnt from this now, and they've deployed to multiple locations to confuse the protests or the public movement, who are sort of trying to stop this, I guess, from happening. And they went ahead and carried out all these arrests. Now, since then, as you said, in response to this, a protest movement has sort of erupted in Los Angeles around it. Now, these protests have been allegedly somewhat violent, and then local police have been deployed to stop, the violence. So the local police are there, but only just because, people are lighting things on fire and stuff. To be fair, I'd be lighting things on fire as well. So not disputing that, but whether or not.
Yep.
But like, this is the other thing, is that this is probably what they want.
Oh,
because now they've deployed the National Guard.
Yes, they being the administration, the Trump administration, have deployed the National Guard in a context that is apparently not unprecedented. It's happened before, but just sort of in a way that's outside the normal kind of process. Because I didn't really know this about the National Guard, but they're kind of state-based.
Yep. Correct. It's the governor that's meant to activate it.
Yes. So, it's normally that the governor of the state would call in essentially like a military group, like the California National Guard in this instance, when, like, I don't know, in an instance of such civil unrest that military intervention is deemed necessary. But in this case, the governor of California has said, no, they're not necessary. Like, it's under control, at least. Like, it's gotten, like, yes, it's escalated, but we don't need the military coming in. But, the Trump administration is clearly trying to make a gigantic show of force because, all of this has been about shock and awe and control, right? Like, they want to be, I think you and George, I'm not watching the show at the moment, but you and George have been making Andor references. They are the Galactic Empire trying to quash the rebellion.
I mean, it's, and it's always the case with, we saw it in Australia as well, that, if there's violence, quote unquote, or if there's protests, is it an organic part of the protest movement, or are there bad actors in that movement that aren't even associated potentially with the protests that are trying to capitalize and provoke things? So I always wonder with these kind of things, like, is it, well, not an inside job, but, is it, when they're saying people are being violent and they're, setting things on fire, and there's a picture here I can see of someone setting some stuff on fire, are they there for the same reasons that the vast majority of people are there, or are they there just to start some shit and to see and to potentially provoke a police response, right?
Oh, I mean, sure, but also like,
and who knows? That's me. That's my conspiracy theory for the day.
Oh, but, yeah, sure. But also, like, some of the things, like, the ABC have sort of some breakdown of some, like, just footage from the ground and stuff like that. That, like, I've seen some of the outbursts of violence have just been because, protesters are yelling at the heavily armed troops, and the heavily armed troops just shoot them with rubber bullets. And it's like, oh, how threatened were you by someone just pointing and yelling at you while holding a slogan sign that you felt weaponry was like an appropriate response? It's a thing of, like, I know people would say, like, oh, and, like, those situations get tense and out of control and, like, it's super, super chaotic really quickly. It's like, yeah, I'm sure they are, but I think to be in that position, to be in the National Guard or in these, like, police force sort of roles, or, like, riot cops or things like that, you need to be the most calm, like level-headed person, because if you are just, like, I saw on some guy looked like an old man was just yelling at one of the riot cops, and, like, just the riot cop just decided, I'm just gonna hit him, and just did it. Like, yeah, you are not the right person to be in this position, because, like, yeah, when they say that violence has broken out, like, yeah, is it because someone set something on fire, or is it because these guys are such, like, tweaked out, like, keen to, like, bash some hippies, lunatics that they've been wanting to hire for so long that they're like, oh, great, you yelled at me, I now have a reason to shoot you with a rubber bullet, hurrah!
There is and we discussed this, I think, in Australia when there was that protest at the weapons, like, conference thing in Melbourne, that
keen to bash some protesters.
Yeah, that's perhaps, sometimes, and particularly in the United States, that there are, perhaps the police roles and that some of these roles, that are deployed in the event of civil unrest, that they're there for. There is a preponderance, perhaps, for these individuals that they want to see people start some shit, so they can
they attract these sorts of people. Yeah.
Yes.
And also, it's being a bit encouraged. So I've got a clip here from of Donald Trump talking about the situation. Now, I don't have George's funky setup, so I will apologize in advance for some jank here. But I thought I'd try to get this clip working. So, yeah, Donald Trump was being asked, in one of his classic plane chats, outside Air Force One chats. This is what he had to say on the situation.
We'll send whatever we need to make sure there's law and order.
Mr. President, do you foresee those protests spreading to other cities, Chicago, New York, for example, in the next few days?
Yes, we're going to be watching it very closely. And when they spit at people, they spit. That's their new thing. They spit, and worse, you know what they throw at them, right? And when that happens, I have a little statement. They say, they spit, we hit. And I told them, nobody's going to spit on our police officers. Nobody's going to spit on our military, which they do as a common thing. They get up to them this far away, and then they start spitting in their face. That happens, they get hit very hard.
Yeah, great. Excellent. So, yeah, perfect. That's the line from the president is like, oh yeah, you spit towards someone completely unarmed and just a little bit of, like, spittle at them, we beat the shit out of you. Like, that's the official line.
Yeah, I don't know. When you got sort of put on these charges for inciting a sort of insurrection, it's kind of hard to see the through line between these two things. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's almost like beating them into submission is the point.
Yeah. But yeah, this is all part of the the fascist playbook, which is that you over respond to perceived civil unrest. And then paint the protesters as the aggressors.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's ongoing. So this isn't resolved. This is still, it's probably escalating, if anything, at the moment. So yeah, we'll watch this as it develops over the next week. But I mean, is this the start of something of a larger civil unrest movements, perhaps in the United States. I don't know. Will it spread to other cities? Maybe.
I mean,
but
yeah, probably. I'd say, like, especially, like, of all the things that we've seen happening in the States over the past 10 years of, like, you know, the Trumpness of it all. Yeah, these mass ICE raids, like the most Nazi looking of the things they've done, right? Like, you know, people, the fascism comparisons, which I think are extremely warranted, but like all those kinds of things of the fascism playbook and all that, people are like, oh, yeah, but they're not like rounding people up and throwing them in camps and things like, no, that's exactly what they've started doing. That's what this is. Like, this. And
keep in mind that Trump has given it's like 1,000 people a day or something they want to be deporting. In terms of the number that's been given. So
you got a deportation target like that. Oh, that's so fucked. I don't know. It's just
pretty crazy.
So I think this is. I don't know. This is a completely different topic of discussion, but I feel like it's just crazy that we're still like dealing with the states. Like, I'm amazed that countries everywhere aren't being like, whoa, like, we've seen this before. I know, like, you can't just immediately switch things off. Things don't, like, happen that quickly. But that everyone's not, like, throwing their weight around of being like, hey, what the fuck? You're turning... Like, you know how we all kind of don't deal with North Korea? We're kind of all being like, we should stop dealing with you crazy power-grabbing lunatics. But,
yeah, it is kind of insane. And it's particularly... I mean, and the reason is that we live in the US society. Like, we are part of the US global order, right? US-led global world order. And so when the people that have been sort of traditionally setting the agenda on that front start behaving like the bad guys, it's kind of hard to just undo. And look, the US has doing a great job of it. Like, they're going hard as they can. They're undoing, 50, 60 years of global hegemony very quickly. So I'm surprised it's not happening. Like, it's probably happening quicker than I thought it would, to be honest.
Yeah, they're crumbling their empire in record time. How long did it take the Romans to fall? Was it like 1,000 years?
Yeah, it was a couple hundred, several hundred years. Depends if you want to like include the Eastern Empire in that. But it's crazy. And I mean, it's you can compare it to like Nazi Germany, for instance. Like, the thing is with the Germans is that they were already on the out. So after World War One, people were dealing with the Germans, the Weimar Republic, but like, they weren't as centrally, like, the systems and the international organizations weren't built around the Weimar Republic. So it was much easier for people to be like, this Hitler guy's a bit fucking shit. So we're not going to, we're going to react to them as opposed to try and work with them. But because everyone's sort of still in bed with the Americans, particularly Australia as well, we're trying to, sort of grin and bear it in the hope that potentially the administration changes and therefore the policy changes at some point. But if Trump dies in office, or if they elect a new president, a new Republican candidate, say next election, the likelihood is some of this stuff will probably live on because it's part of that Republican infrastructure and the conservative infrastructure that has been put in place to support this term in government. And I don't see that being undone unless a Democrat's elected, basically.
Oh, yeah, or unless I feel like there's a mass, like, rejection of it by other governments, because then you could at least have the thing of...
But I don't think they care, Tom. This is the thing, I think ideologically, like, this is what headsets get on about. Like, they don't... And they've said in a Signal chat, they don't want to be helping. They want an isolationist, setup. They don't understand that American strength and power comes through the institutions and the world order they have built. They see it as like just an overcommitment. Why should we help everyone else? So they want to be an isolationist. Like, they want everyone to tell them to fuck off because they don't have to deal with it, and they get what they want. So
I mean, I guess I think that when the reality sits in of all the stuff that they get from everyone else not coming in and that they haven't replaced, like, We talked about smartphones last week of like where all that sort of stuff comes in. It's like, okay, cool. So then technologically everything just plummets.
The problem is that like, you know, the Heritage Foundation, the Republican movement is, and these people that are in power now are so isolated from the realities of, you know, American life in, say, the Midwest or wherever else, even though these are the same people that are voting for them. Like, these people that are in power are the elite, and they are so disconnected from, you know, problems on the ground, so to speak, that, you know, even if it is $1,000, you know, $1,000 American dollars or however much, $6,000, I think, sorry, was the number for an American iPhone. Like, they won't clock it. They won't quite understand it because it's, for them, it's chump change. So I don't, you know, unless you either get to a point of such civil unrest that the government falls.
Yeah, that it's a civil
war
again.
There's a coup, or Trump dies in office and then someone replaces him. JD Vance winds it down a little bit, tones it down a little bit, but probably not.
Definitely not. I think, yeah, he seems to be well on.
Or a Democrat's re-elected next election. That's 4 years away, 3.5 years away. So I don't know. I don't. It's the world as we know it is changing very quickly, and this is part of it.
Yeah. Hilarious. Okay, so
this next story is pretty funny though.
Yeah, right. Let's move on to some lower stakes shenanigans happening again.
Oh, it's not low stakes, Tom. It's life or death.
It's life or death. It's not. Maybe a civil war's about to break out in the global superpower, but it's a big deal because it concerns an AFL stadium, and AFL's really big in this country. It's real big, so that matters. But Adam, why don't you walk us through the tumultuous situation going down in your home state of Tasmania?
Oh my God, what a drama, Tom! What a drama. So, for everyone's reference, if you're not from Tasmania, it's a state of about 600,000 people. Okay, it's not particularly big, but it's very beautiful, and there's a lot of nice things around. And for many, many years, the state has wanted an AFL team. That is a team for the state, which can play in the national competition, and we can pat ourselves on the back and go, aren't we good boys? And there's a path to do that. Okay, which was a deal signed between the AFL, the Australian Football League, and the Liberal government in Tasmania under Jeremy Rockliff. Now, the Liberal government has been in power now in Tasmania for like 12 years or something crazy, and they've changed premiers several times over that course, just like the federal Liberal government. Jeremy Rockliff is the last man in the job, so to speak. And they had an election a year ago, and it was a bit of a hung parliament to an extent. So basically, the Liberals had a very slim majority, and over that time, some people have crossed the floor. There are now some people sitting as independents, and the only way that the Liberal government is actually able to sort of govern is basically through a supply sharing agreement with some independents and other people. So they've got it's a minority Liberal government. The other major, so there's a bunch of people on the crossbench that are independents. So we've got the Jackie Lambie network. There's about 5 or 6 Greens, and a dozen or so Labor. And then keep in mind, the lower house in Tasmania's parliament, it's not particularly big. It's like 40, 50 seats, something like that.
But yeah, a minority government, minorities, which a Liberal Party famously hates. Sorry, indeed. I just had to get that out. Go
on. So anyway, the AFL, after many years of lobbying, finally turned around to Tasmania and went, yeah, you can have a team, but if you have a team, you have to build a stadium. It has to be 20,000 people, and it's got to have a roof.
Oh.
And you've got to pay for most of it for this stadium. We'll chip in like a little bit. The federal government said they'd chip in a bit, but you're going to have to pay for most of it.
Right.
And they were like, how much is it going to cost? And they're like, I don't know, like $500 million. I'm like, that sounds like a good deal. Anyway, turns out it's going to be more like $1 billion, probably, by the time it's actually built.
Damn.
Cost blowouts, inflation, etc., etc. Anyway, and then they were like, well, where are we going to build it? And then there was a sort of a, there was a business case and a report that was done, and they looked at a couple of different sites around the city. Keep in mind, Hobart's basically built on a fucking hill.
Yeah, there's a massive mountain right at the back.
Yeah, so it's not like there's like oodles of flat ground. There are lots of existing sports stadiums around, by the way, which they can upgrade.
Why can't we?
Why
can't we just use one of them?
Just ignore that. Some of them aren't big enough. There's not enough parking. There's issues with infrastructure. It's not close enough to the city, etc. Right?
Yep. Lots
of other issues with the site. So they selected the site at Macquarie Point, which is a former rail yard. Okay, and they've been trying to clean up for the last 15 years. And there were all these visions from Macquarie Point. They were going to put a hospital there at one point. They were going to make it apartments and like new urban dwellings and like cafes and like breweries, and none of that's really happened over the last 15 years. But now they're going to put the stadium there.
Nice.
And that was the one that was selected. That's what the AFL ticked off. And for the last 6 months, we've been gearing up to have this stadium start construction.
Yeah.
Problem is, it's Tasmania.
Mm-hmm.
And the deal that and objectively, the deal that was signed, Tom, is a pile of dog shit. Like, no other state, no other, like, other expansion club in the AFL's history has had this level of, like, requirement put on them.
Okay.
They've basically, like, why does it have to be indoors? Like, for a start,
why does it need to have a roof?
Why does it need to have I mean, obviously it's very cold in Hobart. That's probably why. But by the same token, like putting a roof on increases the cost by like 30% or something.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So like, why? So why is the state government having to pay for all this? Why aren't there private investors or other backers that can be leveraged? Like, why is the Tasmanian quote unquote ratepayer or taxpayer have to foot the bill for this when it hasn't really been the case for other states? Keep in mind as well, Tasmania's got 600,000 people, a lot of which aren't socioeconomically like going gangbusters. There aren't millions of billionaires hanging out in Tassie just like there are in perhaps Victoria or Sydney.
Millions of billionaires?
No,
I don't think
thousands,
there's
hundreds,
millions of billionaires
whatever.
in the country. I think there's only like fewer
okay,
than 200.
Right.
Neither here
you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
There's not heaps of money in the state, is what I'm getting at. The state budget has, over the last 15 years, gotten worse and worse and worse, particularly since COVID, to the point where like they are spending twice as much as they're earning in terms of a state government.
Oh, good.
Right. And there are existing problems with health, with education, literacy rates. Like, things aren't going amazing in the Apple Isle, but to be fair, they haven't been going amazing for like 20 years. This is why I left. Right. These are the same issues that we've been talking about for 20 years in Tasmania. Anyway, so basically, people have cognizant of all these facts and realize that it's a dog shit deal. And there are a lot of people, not necessarily a majority, but a lot of people that are saying, this is bullshit. Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And it started with the Hobart City Council. So the Hobart City Council had to give planning approval for this stadium, right? Keep in mind, you don't get a team. Everyone wants a team, but no one wants a stadium, is kind of what we're getting. Or people think people have got issues with the stadium. So, but it's tied together from the AFL's perspective. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
So anyway, the Hobart City Council is going, well, we aren't going to approve a planning permit for this stadium because it's a big pile of dog shit. We've got a report from a private reviewer, private sort of engineer or whoever it was, private expert that's looked at it. We think this stadium's terrible. It's a terrible idea. We're not going to build it. Hobart City Council's sort of majority Conservative Greens sort of members. They didn't want the cable car. There's a few other things. Yeah, there's a few other things going on with the Hobart City Council. They don't want it. Local paper gets that. They whip it up. That's that aspect. Then there's the Greens in Parliament, in the state Parliament. They don't want it. And then there's Labor. Now Labor, they've changed leaders a few times as well over the last number of years. And there's currently a guy called Dean Winter, who's the Labor leader. Anyway, so to get the stadium going, to get it happening, because it's not going to pass any of the planning approvals because of various reasons, they've had to pass legislation through the state parliament to enable the green, the legal tick to have this stadium started. It also have to apply with Building Code of Australia and all that kind of stuff, but it can, by putting it through Parliament, you can bypass a lot of the standard planning laws, right?
Yeah.
That was tabled last week.
Okay.
Dean Winter, the Labor leader, has since then done some fucking whipping around Parliament and switched all the votes. And what he's done is prior to this stadium bill being debated, he's put through a no confidence motion in Jeremy Rockliff, which succeeded 18-17 after a marathon 2-day debate, which means that now, and when a no confidence motion's passed, it means that basically the Premier doesn't have the confidence of the Parliament and has to go back to the Governor General. Well, not the Governor General, the State Governor of Tasmania. Yeah. So the State Governor of Tasmania is actually on leave at the moment. So there's like a second governor, who's like standing in. Either way, the governor or the second governor has now a couple of options. So they can basically say, so the Premier has to go to the governor and be like, they don't want me. No one loves me. What are we going to do? And so the governor can go, well, she can look around Parliament, see who's elected, and go, well, someone else come back to me and see if you can form a government based on who's currently there. So that might be another Liberal member, for instance, standing up and say, I'll be Premier. Instead of Jeremy Rockliff, we'll form a government. But then you probably end up back at square one, right? Which is the source of the problem, which is this stadium bill. Second option is the Labor could do a coalition with the Greens, which Labor has already said they're not going to do.
Yeah.
Or option two is that you go to another election to try and sort it all out.
Which, as I understand, would be the fourth in 7 years.
Something like that. It's crazy. They keep, and it's because there's only 18 plus 17. What's that? It's less than 40 people in Parliament, right? In the lower house. Anyway, so they haven't decided what's going to happen yet. They're passing some supply bills to make sure that, in the event that they do have to have an election, people can get, the police and nurses and stuff can all get paid.
Yeah.
They're sorting that out first. And then this week, it'll be decided, I guess, what's going to happen. But here's the thing. So either way, if they don't, so that there's a timeline for the AFL team, the Tasmanian AFL team, to enter the competition. If they if there's an election, who knows what happens to that existing bill to get the stadium passed through? It could be altered. If it's a Liberal government again that somehow gets the majority, then maybe they just go back to it and they pass through. But it's still delayed. It's delayed by 2 or 3 months, which means delays construction, delays other approvals. Maybe they go to the election with a policy to tweak certain aspects of the deal. What's probably going to happen is Labor will go in, and they've said that they'll support the stadium, but they want to renegotiate the deal. So what's going to happen is that they're going to go back to the AFL and try and renegotiate. The AFL is going to go, no, fuck you. You want to take it or leave it, and then they'll probably end up back in the same position the Liberals are in now.
Yeah.
Or they say, no, fuck it entirely. Which, either way, this whole AFL team now entering the competition has been put at risk because of this delay in getting through Parliament. So you've got one half of the state that are just freaking out about this AFL team. You've got one half or 1/3 of the state, basically being pretty cynical, being like, we could just spend that money on the hospital. We could spend that money on health. My kids can't eat, which is fair enough. Keep in mind, though, we're talking about $1 billion. You're talking about half to 1 to 2/3 of a funding cycle of the state health budget, right? It's not actually going to, you're not going to, by saving that money, you're not necessarily going to fix the health crisis that's in Tasmania. You could potentially put it into things like social housing or other infrastructure that might help the situation, or you could not spend it, which makes the debt situation better. But people have got a very simplistic way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And look, is the stadium where it's going to be perfect? No. There's no public transport. There's no fucking parking. No one's decided how you're going to get all these, all the tourists that are going to come down for the AFL games. No one knows really, like, what all of a sudden you think Jetstar are going to start putting on more flights? No, they're just going to bump the price up by bloody 30, 40%. Like, there's no one's thought about the sewage. No one's thought about because they have to relocate the sewage lines for there's a sewage treatment plant like around the corner of where they're putting the stadium.
That's right. I was going to say that when we talked about the proposed stadium location, I think a while ago, it was like, isn't there like a sewage plant there?
Like, no one's talked about the fact that it's, the reclaimed land that it's built on is, seeped in like years and years of coal and diesel oil from all the trains that were there and all other chemicals. And they've been cleaning that up. It's better than it was, but like, it's still not perfect. Like, what's going to happen if you drill down? Like, how the foundation's going to work? Like, how are you going to, have we thought about all the other ancillary items that need to go into the stadium that aren't included in the current budget? Like, there are so many problems with it, but the question is like, is it worth just... Tasmanians always see all these problems traditionally, and this is as a Tasmanian, we see all these problems and we go, nah, it's a dumb idea. Let's not do it now. We just need to keep what's special about our state, keep the individualised. We need to not be like other states and just like, keep what's special. But then you'll keep doing that and then nothing actually changes.
Yeah.
And then all the youth leave and then they go, oh, why does everyone not want to live here? And it's like, well, because you never do anything. So it's a fucking comedy of errors, this whole situation. And now, the AFL team, which, hasn't even started yet, but still has members and has been publicly, they've got their mascot and everything. Like, it's now, like, maybe this isn't going to happen, is now what's being talked about in different circles, which seems like the biggest waste of fucking time. If it doesn't go ahead, Tom, I swear to God, it is possibly the biggest waste of time that's ever happened on anything ever.
Yeah, it'd be pretty bananas if after all this, the end result is like, well, we don't get a team, and we're done. We toppled like 3 governments, and we're not doing it.
It's insane. It is such a drama. Like, I'm kind of at the point now where I'm just like, I'm sick of hearing about it. Just build it, and it'll cost what it'll cost. The state government budget isn't just going to fix itself. Like, there are other structural issues that need to happen as well, but that's not the stadium's fault. That's like successive years of mismanagement and the fact there's a small population which doesn't have, a whole lot of the state government doesn't have a whole lot of revenue sources.
Yeah.
So the question is a revenue problem, I would argue, for the state, not necessarily it costs more to cater for the 600,000 or 500,000 people that live in the state than it does to actually than the revenue that those people generate. So maybe there's a question here of working out how do you do you create, and keep in mind the state government owns like the electricity, the hydro commission, like they generate their own power. But maybe there are things like resource taxes or other things you can put on private corporations, for instance, that might be something to look at. But
there's the alarm. What we're going to be taxing big business? Oh no, the sky's going to fall.
But conversely, maybe it's the other way around. Maybe they need to lower taxes for business to encourage more investment into the state, so you've got more private capital flowing around.
Lowering big business
there's
taxes.
2 ways you could go.
That's a personal alarm. That's right.
So
I got to cut you off there, Adam. No, you can't just be advocating for big business to pay less tax. No, up with this, I will not put. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. No.
Anyway, what would you do? Would you vote for a stadium, Tom? What would you do?
I mean, well, you're asking someone who's not very sporty and has never attended an AFL game. I attended a rugby match when I was 7, and I think other than that, I have not attended many sports tournaments.
Okay.
So I'd be like, I could take it or leave it. I'd be arguing, can't we have our AFL team just in a stadium we already have? Like, when our state is populated essentially the same as Canberra. I think Canberra is about that many people. It's like Canberra, but a whole state. Do we need to build another stadium? All these stadiums can't be being used at once. Like, surely with this population, can't we just use one of them? If the AFL want to chuck some branding on it or whatever, like, fucking let them. But come on.
The problem is that, like, you know, they've got two stadiums. So Hawthorn plays at one, North play at the other.
Yep.
And those deals, one of them is sponsored directly through a state government. The other one's through an arm's length organisation, so Spirit of Tas. Those deals are going to wind up because of this AFL team. But, you know, one of those grounds holds about 18,000 people. One of them holds about 16,000 people. The AFL business case basically says you need a 20,000 seat stadium for enough money to be made to basically make this whole endeavour worthwhile. Because the AFL, keep in mind, takes cuts out of all the ticket sales, right?
Yeah, of course.
As well as the TV rights and all that kind of shit. So they're saying, well, you need to have a bigger stadium for us for the business case to work from an AFL point of view. You need to have a 20,000 seat stadium, and you need to be selling it out regularly, which I don't think will happen anyway. Even if you have 20,000 seats, you know, I don't see 20,000 people going to a game every week. Although they're arguing that it won't necessarily need to be 20,000 Tasmanians. It'll just need to be 20,000, you know, people, some of which will travel. But again, you know, if airfares are already expensive to Tasmania, like I don't see, you know, what the Jetstar and Virgin are going to start putting on more flights to like get all these people down there. And like, you know, a Boeing 737, what are they? 737, 800, 200, whatever the model number is.
Yeah.
They only fit like 280 people on a flight. So how many flights are you going to need to get, say, 5,000 people down there for a game?
Yeah. Especially like if people are traveling, like, oh yeah, you might travel the morning of or the day before to like stay over one night. Like, yeah, that's still like, unless people
aren't traveling a week before the football to see a game.
It's not the grand final, like where people fucking travel down in mass.
And it's not like you know in the mainland where you could potentially just drive there if you want. You know, like that's not an option. You have to either get a boat or get a plane.
Yeah, you either have to do the ferry, the Spirit of Tasmania, like ferry or fly, right? So yeah.
So
no easy
clusterfuck.
solution, but it's also just funny that like we're toppling governments over an AFL team.
An AFL team. There are so many problems in the world, but the AFL team.
Donald Trump is rounding up anyone vaguely foreign to them, and shipping them off to concentration camps.
Yeah.
And he's still sitting there. But this, you know, the Premier of Tasmania, by one vote, has been given a no confidence vote because fucking hell, we haven't got an AFL team yet, and that is unacceptable.
Let's put it the way around. It's like, well, we don't need the AFL team, you know? It's like, come on. It's a big pile of dog shit.
Yeah.
But you know, it gave me lols for this week in the face of all the other uncertainties. So I'll take the lols, I'll bank those, and we will roll them on to next week.
Yeah, there's some delicious Schadenfreude. But speaking of big piles of dog shit, we are and will always be Unnatural Selection. That wraps us up for this week. You can visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. You can also find us on all the social media that bullshit that has, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. Oh boy, what's the list again? That is like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, mother flippin' TikTok. Has there been another one recently that I've just forgotten about? I don't know. George manages a lot of that sort of stuff. His Substack is also on our website.
Yeah.
You can read that if you want.
Thoughts and feelings about stuff.
He does.
You can read that and agree or disagree.
And they're often pretty good thoughts and feelings.
Actually,
like, you know,
entertaining.
I'm all for it.
An engaging read.
And you can follow me on the social medias of Threads at tom.heath.
You can't follow me on social media, but you can follow me down to Tasmania, where I will be leading a protest movement against the political system that we have and advocating for an AFL team with or without a stadium.
Well, good luck with that. But thank you all for listening. We love your faces, even though we can't see them, and we will see you next week. Maybe with George. I forget when he's coming back. Should probably know that. I reckon he will.
He's in paradise. He's never coming back. He's
he's just the family's just going to go off the grid.
Yep. Live in the jungle.
Yep. And you know what? Good for them.
Hmm.
If only it was so easy.
Yes. Money.